Actually means friends or friendship in this case. So Operation Friendship. You know, the total force of the SDF in Japan is about 245,000, which includes self-defense force, which includes maritime and air force and army. Out of 245,000, 109,000 SDF personnel were deployed in this part of Japan for this operation. And you may have read USS Ronald Reagan was deployed, and lots of US troops had, I mean, this is the first time actually that US troops and the SDF personnel, they got involved in an operation situation. They have done lots of exercises together, but they never had done any operation together. So this was the first time that they were involved in an operation. And this actually helped raise the status of the SDF in the eyes of ordinary Japanese people, because ordinary Japanese people do not have any idea as to what the SDF does. Many of them have never seen any of this SDF personnel, and they hear stories on the radio or television, but for the first time in front of their eyes through media, television, and actually they saw what these SDF guys were doing in terms of their rescue and restoration effort. The other thing is about citizens' movements in Japan. I showed this slide to you about this Occupy Meti, but that's not the only thing. I remember in October 2011, there was a huge rally in Tokyo. 60,000 people came to that rally, including one of the Japanese Nobel laureates, in opposition to this nuclear power plants. So lots of things are happening in terms of people getting involved, both organized groups as well as non-organized groups, as spontaneous groups have been formed to help people and also to oppose the nuclear industry. We have also seen actually rise of new types of political leaders at local level. As a matter of fact, Fukui I mentioned on the Japan Sea side, Fukui Prefecture. The governor of Fukui Prefecture has come out very strongly against the idea of nuclear power plants. And in Japan, as a matter of fact, even if the central government says that let's start the nuclear power plants in Fukui, if the governor says no, that means no. The governor has got the veto power. If he says no, these plants cannot be operated. Similarly, in Osaka, which is the second largest, maybe the third largest city in Japan after Tokyo and Yokohama, the new mayor of Osaka has been an opponent of nuclear power plants in Japan. So it's quite interesting as to what the future holds in terms of these nuclear power plants, where you can see on the one hand very strong interest on part of the business community, especially the nuclear industry. On the other hand, we are seeing this new kinds of opposition, not just by citizen-based opposition, but also among politicians at the local level who are really key decision makers in terms of these nuclear power plants. This is about, now, future issues. There are several issues. I haven't listed them all here, but one is, of course, disaster management. Japan is very prepared. I heard a story in Tokyo this time that they are so prepared. As you know, there are millions of people traveling every day in Tokyo subways. There are 14 subways lines in Tokyo, and I'm not talking about JR lines and private lines. There are maybe 25, 30 lines operating, railway lines operating for commuters. And you can think of this scenario, what happens if there is an earthquake which is even bigger than magnitude of 9 on Richter scale. What will happen? The government of Tokyo has announced that they are well prepared and they can rescue people and there will be very little damage as a result. But the point is, people don't accept these kinds of announcements by governments because they are not sure. So I remember Indu was traveling recently while I was in Japan, from one part of Tokyo to the other part of Tokyo, and one of my friends suggested to her that carry some candies with you and a bottle of water with you. You never know when the train is going to stop in a tunnel, so you have got some supply of sugar and some water with you. So people are, they themselves are very ready and very prepared, because there are warnings that Tokyo is going to be hit by a large earthquake in not so future, not so long future. So they are quite prepared. Both government and people are very prepared. And also about the warning system, as I said that the warning system, they had a very elaborate. I went to this prefecture in Iwate, and when we were traveling through the coast, you can see there everywhere there are warning signs and there are speakers, so everything goes very fast. But the kind of information they got was not correct, because they did not get this information that the tsunami was going to be 15 meters. Perhaps many would have escaped if they knew that the tsunami was going to cross the sea walls. The other thing is about, I think, nuclear energy and its management. And I will come to that in a minute. Tim, how are we going? Another 5 minutes? Okay, I will finish that. The issue of human security is quite interesting, as a matter of fact. When we talk about human security in international relations, we think in terms of human security after civil war. There is a war in Iraq or Afghanistan, and after the war, how do you, what they call, freedom from want and freedom from fear. Now this freedom from fear and freedom from war, that is human security, has taken a new dimension in Japan. Because people in Japan are living in fear. And people in Japan, 300,000 people in Japan are living in a situation where they also require freedom from want. In other words, they are dependent. And the Japanese culture is that they don't want to be dependent on the government. They don't want to be dependent on anyone, as a matter of fact. So they don't really like this situation. But this human security concept, as I said, has taken a whole new meaning in Japan, and the government, people, institutions, they are all kind of struggling to come to grips with how to deal with this new kind of human security and the definition of human security, which has taken a new dimension in Japan. Nuclear This is. I just thought this is quite interesting. You can see these dotted, these red dots here, all along the sea coast here, everywhere. Nuclear power plants are located in these, and each of them has got several reactors in there. So it's everywhere, from Hokkaido up there to Kyushu, not in Okinawa. Now, nuclear dilemma is quite an important thing at the moment, which way Japan is going to go. I'm sure they will reopen some of these nuclear power plants because nuclear power plants are shut down even in a normal situation for safety checks. Very often they are shut down for a few months. So some of them are going under safety checks. Whether the local government will allow them to become operational or not, that's an issue. But before this crisis, Japan got 30% of its electricity from nuclear power plants. So from 54 nuclear power plants down to 2, it is very difficult for Japan to operate in terms of supply of electricity.